I didn't realize my property had been converted into a retirement facility until my daughter-in-law informed me of the move-in date. I was standing on the front porch of my Montana cabin, holding a mug of black coffee, when Brenda made the announcement over the phone. I am Dorothy Sullivan. I spent 37 years working 12-hour shifts as a surgical nurse in Chicago. I spent decades on my feet, dealing with emergencies, managing chaos, and saving every spare dollar. When I finally retired, I bought 9 acres in the Bitterroot Valley. It wasn't a mansion. It was a modest log cabin with a large detached workshop and a guest shed that needed fresh paint, surrounded by pine trees and quiet. It was exactly what I had earned. Brenda didn't ask. She simply executed a plan. "My parents are arriving on the 15th, she stated, her voice clipping through the receiver with that familiar, busy tone. "They're going to take the guest house. The rental market in Seattle is just too crazy right now, and they need a place to settle. Besides, Dorothy, at your age, that's way too much land for you to manage alone. Having my dad around to help with maintenance will be good for you." I watched a hawk circle over the lower pasture. I didn't feel a sudden spike of rage. Decades in an operating room train you out of panic. When something goes wrong, you don't scream. You assess the bleeding. "Brenda," I replied, keeping my voice entirely flat. "The guest house is full of my gardening equipment. It isn't insulated for winter. David and I will come up this weekend to clear it out," she countered, completely ignoring my point. "It's what family does." "Dorothy," she hung up before I could respond. I didn't call her back. I didn't call my son, David, to complain, or cry. I simply finished my coffee, washed the mug, and walked out to the guest house to look at the door. I knew right then that arguings would change nothing. I needed a different approach. David called 2 days later. My son is a good man at his core, but he has the backbone of a damp paper towel when it comes to his wife. "Mom," he started, his voice thick with artificial cheerfulness. "I know Brenda sprang that on you. Her folks are just in a tight spot. It's only temporary, maybe 6 months. We'll help you clean out the shed. It'll be nice having people around, right? Did you agree to this before she called me?" "David," I asked. He hesitated. That half-second of dead air was all the answer I needed. "We talked about options," he muttered. "She just kind of ran with it." "I see. You aren't mad?" he asked, sounding genuinely relieved. "I'll see you this weekend," I answered, and pressed the red button on my screen. I drove my truck into town that afternoon. I went straight to the local hardware store and walked down the security aisle. I didn't need to consult anyone, and I certainly didn't need permission. I bought 3 heavy-duty, weather-resistant padlocks, 2 thick steel chains, and a new deadbolt. When I returned home, I didn't pack up my gardening supplies. Instead, I spent an hour replacing the flimsy old lock on the guest house. I secured the heavy steel chain through the handles of the double doors, snapping the padlock shut with a satisfying metallic click. I did the same to my detached workshop. I put the only keys on my personal key ring and dropped it deep into my pocket. People who bulldoze boundaries rely on the assumption that you will be too polite to stop them. They expect you to complain, maybe yell, but ultimately step aside to avoid an awkward scene. I wasn't going to yell. I was just going to make the space physically unavailable. When I went to bed that night, the wind howled down the valley, rattling the window panes. I slept beautifully. Brenda and David were arriving Saturday morning. They were expecting to find an elderly woman ready to be organized. They were going to find something else entirely. Friday morning. The gravel crunching on my driveway interrupted my reading. I stepped onto the porch to see a large white box truck idling near the front steps. A man in a blue uniform hopped out, holding a clipboard. "Delivery for a Sullivan," he called out, shielding his eyes from the morning sun. "Got a queen-sized mattress and a box spring." I walked down the steps. I hadn't ordered a mattress. "Who is the name on the invoice?" He checked his paperwork. "Brenda Sullivan. Billed to a card ending in 4421. I nodded slowly. She was already outfitting the guest house. She was moving furniture onto my property before even setting foot on it to clear the space. It was a power move, designed to make the transition inevitable. "There's no Brenda Sullivan at this address," I told the driver. He frowned, looking at the house. "Address matches. 900 Elk Ridge Road. The address matches, but the person doesn't live here," I clarified, offering a polite smile. "This is my property, and I decline the delivery. You'll have to return it to the warehouse." He looked relieved not to have to haul a mattress up my porch stairs. "Works for me, ma'am. I'll note it as refused by owner." 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with Brenda's picture. I let it ring 3 times before swiping to answer. "Why did the furniture store just call me saying the delivery was rejected?" she demanded, no greeting. "Because I sent them away," I replied evenly. "Dorothy, that mattress is for my parents. They need a place to sleep next week." "Then you should have it delivered to their house, or yours," I suggested. "Do not send merchandise to my address. Brenda, it will be sent back every single time." "You are being completely unreasonable," she shouted. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear. "Drive safely tomorrow," I said, and ended the call. I turned off my phone, grabbed my gloves, and went out to weed the garden. They arrived Saturday, right before noon. David looked exhausted, dark circles pulling at his eyes. Brenda stepped out of their SUV looking like she was ready for a corporate takeover, clipboard in hand. Designer sunglasses pushed into her hair. She offered a tight, forced smile. "Dorothy, let's get straight to work. Dad has a lot of tools, so we need to clear out the guest house and probably make some room in your workshop, too." She marched straight past me toward the guest house, her boots clicking on the dirt path. David lingered by the car, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom," he whispered, "just let her do her thing. It's easier." "For who?" I asked him. He didn't answer. We followed Brenda to the guest house. She grabbed the door handle and yanked. It didn't budge. She looked down, noticing the heavy steel chain and the thick padlock for the first time. She pulled at it, the metal clanking loudly against the wood. "Where is the key for this?" she snapped, turning to face me. "In my pocket," I answered. "Well, open it." She sighed, holding out her hand expectantly. "We have a lot of trash to haul to the dump today." I crossed my arms over my chest. "There's no trash in there. It's my equipment. And the doors are staying locked." Brenda's hand dropped. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. "Dorothy, we talked about this. My parents are moving in next Friday." "You talked about this," I corrected her. "You informed me." "You didn't ask. And I didn't agree. Nobody is moving into my guest house." "David," she barked, spinning toward my son. "Tell your mother to open the door." David shifted his weight, looking at the dirt. "Mom, come on. They gave up their lease. They have nowhere else to go right now." "That is a problem," I agreed calmly. "But it is not my problem." They left an hour later in a cloud of dust and shouting. Brenda had threatened everything from never letting me see my future grandchildren to calling the county on my unpermitted workshop. I simply sat on the porch and drank my iced tea until they drove away. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. The incident had made me look closely at the invisible threads connecting me to my son. When David was struggling through his 20s, I had put him on my cellular family plan. Later, when he and Brenda bought their cars, I co-signed the loan for David's truck, and I still paid his auto insurance every 6 months as a gift to help them out. I had done it out of love. But as I looked at the bank statements, I realized Brenda viewed my money as her safety net. She felt entitled to my real estate because she already felt entitled to my income. I logged into the cellular provider's website. I selected David's number. With 3 clicks, I separated his line from my account, transferring the billing responsibility entirely to him. Next, I logged into my auto insurance portal. I removed his truck from my policy. It was a Sunday night. The changes would take effect immediately. I didn't call to warn them. I didn't send a long, emotional text message explaining how disrespected I felt. Explanations are just invitations for arguments. Actions are final. I closed the laptop, feeling a strange lightness in my chest. For years, I had absorbed their minor disrespects, telling myself I was keeping the peace. But peace bought with your own comfort isn't peace. It's a hostage situation. I turned off the kitchen light and went to sleep, wondering how long it would take for them to notice. It took exactly 48 hours. Tuesday afternoon, the landline in my kitchen rang. I rarely use it, keeping it only for emergencies due to the spotty cell service in the valley. "Mom!" David's voice sounded frantic. My phone got cut off. I had to go to a store in town. They said you removed me from the plan. I did, I confirmed, wiping down the kitchen counter. Why? And Brenda checked our mail. We got a notice from the DMV about a lapse in auto insurance for the truck. Did you stop paying it? Yes, David. I did. I rinsed the sponge and set it down. You are 34 years old. If you and your wife are financially secure enough to take on housing and supporting her parents, then you are certainly secure enough to pay your own phone bill and truck insurance. There was a long silence. I could hear the gears turning in his head. Brenda is going to lose her mind. He finally muttered. That is between you and your wife, I replied. I heard a muffled exchange in the background. Brenda snatched the phone from him. You think you're so smart, Dorothy, she hissed. You think cutting off a few bills is going to stop us? Fine. Keep your stupid shed. My dad bought a used RV yesterday. We're hauling it up there on Friday and parking it on the lower pasture. We don't need your keys to park on dirt. We'll hook up to your water and run a generator. Do not bring an RV onto my property, I warned her. Watch me, she spat and slammed the phone down. I looked out the kitchen window at the lower pasture. It was a beautiful, flat stretch of grass. The only way to get a heavy RV down there was via a single, narrow dirt access road that split off from my main driveway. I stared at that road for a long time. Wednesday morning, I called Tom Miller. Tom lived a few miles up the highway and ran a heavy equipment business. He had cleared the stumps when I first bought the land. Tom, it's Dorothy Sullivan, I said when he answered. Are you busy this afternoon? For you. Dorothy, I can make time. What do you need? I've decided to put in a massive garden next spring on the lower pasture. I need to run irrigation pipes from the main well line. I need a trench dug right across the lower access road. A deep one. Tom chuckled. How deep we talking? 3 feet deep? 4 feet wide? I instructed. Right across the entry point. Leave the dirt piled up high on the pasture side. Tom arrived at 1 o'clock with his backhoe. The diesel engine roared to life, shattering the mountain quiet. I sat on a lawn chair with a glass of lemonade and watched him work. The steel bucket bit into the hard Montana earth, tearing up the access road. By 4 o'clock, the only entrance to the lower pasture was completely impassable. A massive, gaping trench stretched across the dirt road, flanked by a 4-foot-high mound of loose, rocky soil. You couldn't get a bicycle across it, let alone a 30-foot recreational vehicle. That's a serious trench, Dorothy, Tom noted, wiping sweat from his forehead as he climbed down from the cab. You putting in a pipe or a moat? I smiled, handing him an envelope with his cash. A little bit of both, Tom. A little bit of both. He tipped his hat and drove off. I walked over to the trench. It was beautiful. No lawyers, no eviction notices, no screaming matches. Just a physical reality. My property. My dirt. I went inside and prepped a roast for Friday night. Friday afternoon brought rain. It was a cold, driving Montana rain that turned dust into thick, heavy mud. I was sitting by the front window with a book when I saw the headlights. A heavy-duty pickup truck turned off the county road onto my gravel driveway. Attached to the back was a massive, battered 30-foot travel trailer. Brenda's parents were in the truck, with David and Brenda following closely behind in their SUV. I marked my page, set the book down, and stepped out onto the covered porch, pulling my cardigan tight against the damp chill. The truck rumbled slowly past the house, ignoring me entirely. Brenda's father steered the rig toward the fork in the driveway, aiming for the lower pasture. I watched from the porch, not saying a word. The brake lights on the truck suddenly flared a brilliant red. The tires locked up, skidding on the wet gravel. From my vantage point, I saw the exact moment they realized the road was gone. The front bumper of the truck stopped less than 2 feet from the edge of the trench. The massive mound of dirt behind the hole blocked any view of the grass beyond. Car doors slammed. Brenda jumped out of the SUV, pulling her jacket over her head against the rain. Her father got out of the truck, pointing at the massive ditch. David stepped out slowly, looking at the trench, and then turning his gaze slowly up the hill toward the porch where I stood. Brenda started marching up the hill. Her designer boots sank into the mud with every furious step. By the time she reached the bottom of my porch stairs, she was soaked, shivering, and absolutely livid. "What the hell is that?" she screamed, pointing wildly back at the mud pit. "It's an irrigation trench," I answered, leaning against the wooden railing. "I'm putting in a garden in the spring. I told you. Brenda, you cannot park an RV on my land." "Fill it in," she shrieked, the rain plastering her hair to her face. "My parents have nowhere to go. We gave up the lease. Then you should have secured a legal campsite before driving a trailer onto someone else's property without permission," I replied. David walked up the stairs, looking miserable. "Mom, please. We're here. The trailer is here. Can't you just call the guy to push the dirt back?" I looked at my son, David, who owns this house. He blinked, rain dripping from his nose. "You do." "Who pays the mortgage?" "You do." "And who decided, without asking, to move 2 extra adults onto this property?" He looked down at his boots. Brenda grabbed his arm. "Stop letting her interrogate you. She's doing this to be vicious." I didn't raise my voice. I simply locked eyes with my son, David. If you want to support her parents, that is your choice as a husband. but you will do it on your dime and on your land. You will not hijack my retirement to fund your wife's family. You need to turn that truck around and leave." Brenda opened her mouth to scream again, but David suddenly held up his hand. It was the first time in years I had seen him stop her. "Enough, Brenda," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. He looked utterly exhausted. He looked at the locked guest house, the trench, and then at me. The reality had finally broken through the fog. "She's not going to let us stay. Get back in the car." "David." "Get in the car," he repeated, turning away from her. It took them 45 minutes to back that massive trailer out of my driveway. The access was tight, and Brenda's father nearly jackknifed the rig twice in the mud. I didn't offer to help direct them. I went inside, poured a glass of red wine, and watched them finally pull away onto the county road, their taillights fading into the rainy dusk. I found out later they spent the weekend in a Walmart parking lot before finding a commercial RV park on the edge of Missoula. Brenda had to take on a second shift at the clinic to cover the $900 a month lot rent. They didn't speak to me for 3 months. I used that time to actually lay the irrigation pipe and plant the winter squash. I painted the trim on the guest house. I read books without interruption. In late November, a familiar truck pulled into the driveway. Just one. David stepped out alone. He didn't look like a boy seeking his mother's approval anymore. He looked like a tired man trying to figure out his own life. I met him on the porch. He didn't apologize, and I didn't demand one. "Need help splitting firewood?" he asked, gesturing to the pile near the workshop. "I do." I nodded. We worked in silence for an hour, the rhythmic thwack of the axe echoing off the mountains. He told me he was taking over his own finances and that he and Brenda were going to counseling. I just listened. I didn't offer to pay for the sessions. When he left, he hugged me tightly. I watched his truck disappear down the road. I walked back into my house, locked the heavy front door, and looked out at my 9 acres. It was quiet. It was mine. And it was perfect. So, here's the reality I had to accept. And maybe it's something you've been figuring out, too. Setting boundaries doesn't require a screaming match. It doesn't require a long, emotional text message or a list of justifications. The people who are used to walking all over you will never validate your reasons anyway. I learned that peace isn't something you get by constantly saying yes just to avoid an argument. Real peace is a quiet padlock. It's an irrigation trench. It's the simple, unapologetic refusal to let someone else's poor planning become your daily emergency. You don't have to be angry to say no. You just have to be firm and let your actions do the talking. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with family, or if you've always been the one expected to quietly absorb everyone else's problems, drop a comment down below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear how you handled your situation. Did you try to explain yourself? Or did you just change the locks? If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. I share stories like this every week about taking back our peace and living life on our own terms. Thanks for spending some of your day with me, and I'll see you in the next one.